Fun.
Hi. Hello.
Hi.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
Howdy.
We're going to kick off in about 5 minutes. I just want to let everyone know as well, we're going to be muting folks as they come in. So don't be surprised if you see somebody's muted you. All right. I think I'll get things started. So my name is Justin Berger. I'll be facilitating our panel discussion on the comp plan with some live Q&A from Friends of Clark County. I'm a board member for Friends of Clark County resident, and I run a small farm outside of Yak Hall. A little bit about Friends of Clark County. If you want to go to the next slide. Friends of Clark County is a 501(c)(3) nonprofit working within our community and with other community partners who share our vision for a thriving Clark County. Our work's essential to the future of Clark County. We're the only organization in Clark County that defends the Growth Management Act, and we recognize the urgency we face to protect our natural and community resources such as water, local farming, forests, forest lands, parks, trails, and wildlife habitats for future generations. Next slide. Just some housekeeping and to kind of walk through the format for our panel discussion this afternoon. Our panelists will present for about 45 minutes in order to contextualize our conversation. We'll have about 20 to 25-minute panel discussion with questions that we've collected in advance of our through our social media following. We'll also allow folks to ask questions via the text chat within Zoom. So if you have any questions, feel free from now until we start the panel Q&A to put your questions into the chat. At the end, we'll provide some things you can do if you want to engage with planning for future parks, trails, and open spaces. If you need something, we can help. Please direct messages to Friends of Clark County in the chat. And following the webinar, we'll share these materials with all the attendees via email, share the links to the recording on our website, and ask you to fill out a brief survey if you would. So thanks again for joining us on a Monday afternoon. Next slide. In terms of an agenda, we'll have some panelist introductions, give a brief background of Friends of Clark County, and then we'll go into Clark County Comprehensive Plan Update, what the past looks like, preferred alternative selections, the present, chapter draft and working sessions, and the future, hearings and adoption. Then we'll move into a live Q&A from our audience, Friends of Clark County priorities. Then we'll talk about Friends of Clark County priorities beyond the comp plan and some closing asks for all the people listening. Next slide. So I wanted to introduce everyone to our panelists. First, we have Ann Foster, who's the president of Friends of Clark County, Jackie Lane, who's a treasurer, Jim Byrne, who's a policy chair, and David McDonald, who's a land use attorney and volunteers with Friends of Clark County. So I will hand it over to Jim to walk through some brief history of Friends of Clark County.
Good evening, everyone. So a little bit of our history. Friends was founded in 1996 by residents of North County out of concern for rampant development and loss of agricultural and forest lands. Washington's Growth Management Act was implemented by the state in the early 1990s. The Rural Clark County Preservation Association was founded in 1993, and it served as a precursor for Friends of Clark County, and it disbanded in 2002. So we have been participating in comprehensive planning since '93. Initially, we favored the hometown version of the first county framework plan. The highest rated components in descending order of this hometown plan were 1, preservation of resource lands, 2, strict design and appearance standards in high-density developments, 3, directing rural development to towns, 4, requiring large lots in rural areas, and 5, directing a larger share of transportation to mass transit. And this has been our continued position in all subsequent comp plans. These issues remain to this day. How do we balance economic development with protecting our resources and community assets? We believe public engagement is essential. That's why we're holding this forum. And David McDonald has been an advisor to Friends of Clark County since its beginning and has been our trusted legal advocate since 2007. So thank you.
Thanks, Jim. So now I'm going to hand it over to Jackie, who will give an overview of the preferred alternative selection.
Good afternoon. So the Growth Management Act has us do a comp plan every 10 years. And so we're in the 2025 cycle. This lays out how the county and the cities do their own plans within the context of the county plan, support projected growth over the next 20 years. It includes the urban growth boundaries, the boundaries of the cities, infrastructure, roads, parks, capital facilities, et cetera. And now they've added dealing with climate change, resilience, and preparing and mitigation for climate change. The GMA lays out the content and goals of the plan, and minimizing sprawl, protecting resource lands, et cetera. And they've been working on this plan, 2025 plan, since 2021. Here I list some of the major things that have been completed, which provide staff, the Planning Commission, and the Council with the information needed to determine what the comp plan will look like. And these include a model of what the buildable lands are, population employment projections, allocation. And this is something new, allocation by income bracket. So they can't just say we need 500,000 homes. You need to plan for homes across the expected income brackets that we'll have. And this is a big change. We have the city draft plans and requests have come in. There have been site-specific requests where people have said, I would like my piece of property be whatever. And then there were 3 alternatives selected for staff to look at. And one of those was a do nothing because that's required by the GMA. And then an ag study was done recently. Next slide. So there were 3 alternatives studied. Alt 1 is basically no change, which GMA requires. Alternative 2 is pretty much the recommendations from staff, and that included zoning and other changes needed to meet the goals, and climate goals and protection of resource lands. And then alternative 3 had requests that came in from the cities and others that were studied but not recommended. And this included the de-designation of agricultural land that 3 cities requested. So next slide. The public response was pretty clear. They wanted no expansion of the current growth boundaries, no de-designation of ag. And a lot of people spoke up, a lot of people wrote in. We've been looking at all of these responses. On the other hand, the cities and a lot of development interests and property owners obviously had some different things that they were advocating for. Technically, the preferred alternative selection is not a final decision, but it is what was studied. So any change to that would probably have impacts to our schedule. They voted to select a variation on the alternative 2. So they included the ag land designations that Ridgefield and La Center and Camas asked for. And so this decision they made guides the completion of comp plan update, and specifically is what was studied for the final environmental impact statement. Next slide. So if we look at this, these are sort of the changes. The Planning Commission also selected some variations on Alt 2 and 3, and they added a creation of a transfer of development rights program. Okay, I'm sorry, I have to back up. There was what the Planning Commission did, and then when the county got it, they did some additional changes. They pulled the TDR program, and they added the ag land next to Camas. None of the data that they have from all the previous phases support these changes or support any growth of the UJs at all. So next slide. Oops, there we go. I think I'm done.
And that's me.
Yay.
Take it over, Ann.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, my turn to round this out with a few brief slides on the comp plan schedule as we know it now. I just want to reiterate a couple of things that you heard from Jackie. Keep in mind as you look at this schedule in particular, and you see an end date in October, keep in mind that we've been working on this since 2021. I can remember a Friends of Clark County forum that we had in 2021, and we welcomed Community Planning's director, Oliver Orgiaco, to sort of introduce the process for us and for our listeners. And I remember him saying, it's early in the process. However, the important piece is to get involved in these early stages and stay with it. And that was 5 years ago. At that point in time, the update was due in June of 2025. Here we are towards the end of the summer in 2026. And we have a targeted end date of October. Between now and October, there are a series of work sessions and hearings which are going to take place. But let me just take a look at this slide with you and notice all that has been done, especially since March, which is the onset of this particular slide. The Planning Commission work sessions, the council work sessions, on all the different elements that are contained in this huge plan. So it's a tremendous amount of effort, a tremendous amount of work, and just keep in mind that it's 5 years worth of effort. It's 2 county councils full of effort. So it was started with a different county council than the one that exists now, to give you a sense of timing. So next slide, please, Carissa. So lots of July 24th, 2026 is on these last 2 slides, because that was the date that the plan was actually sort of wrapped up and sent off to the Department of Commerce with the state for its review. Now, during that 60-day period of review, there's still work that's being done. So notice here, there's a planning commission and a final adoption. I just want to make sure you understand the role of the planning commission in this whole process. The planning commission is an advisory board to the council. It recommends, it reviews, it studies, it deliberates, and recommends to the council. So that's the role that the Planning Commission has. It is made up of volunteers. There is a Planning Commission work session coming up soon, as you notice. And then there are Planning Commission hearings. The difference between a work session and a hearing is that the work session is just what it says. It's a work session. It is not a hearing. There's no public comment available at that point in time. You can write in comments to the Planning Commission, but there's no testifying at a work session. A hearing, however, is open to the public for public comment purposes. Deliberation is, again, just as it says, it's where the Planning Commission members deliberate. They take in all the public comment that they've received, and that they've received both orally and online, and they come to a conclusion which gets handed to the county council. So the item 13, 15, final adoption, again, a county council work session, just as it says, it's just a work session. The 2 important dates here, council hearing in which a deliberation takes place. It may continue on. We expect that it probably will continue on to a second day, but it starts October 6th. Council hearing, final ordinance of adoption, October 13th. So there's some key dates in here in the process. Just because we see that the comp plan has been submitted to the Department of Commerce doesn't mean it's the end, that the ball game's over. There's still time for runs to be made and home runs to be made. And amazingly enough, yes, there is the possibility that changes could be made to the plan that was submitted. So that's the plan as it stands now. There's always the possibility that a date will slip here and there. So we really advise that you stay tuned either through us or directly with the county websites on excuse me, pivotal dates. See if they've changed at all. But the effective date of adoption at this point in time is October 23rd, 2026. Next slide, please. And this is sort of a simple guide on staying involved with the planning process. We can't reiterate enough the importance of staying involved and letting your comments and your opinions be heard. We feel, and this has been confirmed by elected officials, that the voice of the residents who live and work and pay taxes in Clark County is extremely important. So however you choose and however you are able to make your opinions heard, either in writing or in person or by phone even, it's important to take the time to do that because they do listen. They may not always act as though they do. That's sort of a word from experience here is they don't always do exactly what we would like them to do the way elected officials are. However, it's those county councilors that make those decisions based upon what they hear and what they know and what they think is best. So once again, as a reminder, through the 16th of September, there are planning commission meetings and there are council meetings. Stay tuned for reminders for those events. Friends of Clark County sends out a weekly radar, thanks to Carissa. And in those radars every Monday, we will be putting reminders of important dates coming up in which it could behoove you to appear to make your opinions known or to send in an email. It goes in the public record and it gets heard. Next slide. I think it's back to you, Justin.
Thanks, Ann. So we'll start our live Q&A. So the way this is going to work is I'll read off a question. I'll call on somebody to get the conversation started, but it's an open conversation between panelists. So feel free, panelists, to jump in. I think a good one to start with.
Sure will.
Yeah, I think a good one to start with, David McDonald. I think you should start with this one if possible. The question is around the history of sprawl. As I drive around Clark County, I see a lot of land that was once farmed, but is now sprawling houses. If the ag land is supposed to be protected, how can that happen? You're muted, David.
Yep. Thank you, Justin, for the question. I was just saying to myself, I need to unmute myself. So I have been involved in this process since the late 80s. And back in the day, they used to have something called the Boundary Review Board, which I chaired for a short period of time, where we looked at expansions of development into our agricultural lands. And for the most part, the board that I served on, many times against my dissents, allowed for that to happen before the passage of the original growth management plan in 1994. Once 1994 growth plan was passed, or excuse me, before the 1994 growth management plan was passed, our original comp plan, based upon the passage of the Growth Management Act, many people across the county divided and subdivided their properties and put them into subdivisions and short plats and divided them from 40 or 80 acre pieces down to 5s and 2.5s. And those properties were what were called vested. So instead of when the growth plan was passed, many of these lands that we had been large agricultural properties or forestry properties had been carved up. Many times over the years, those parcels have then been served up as through processes called with like cluster subdivisions or single family residences on 5 or 10 acres in the rural areas. And the clustered subdivision process over the years has been twofold. One, you would originally have a cluster subdivision, which would allow for some higher density residences on ag lands or resource lands. And then you would have a remainder property, which was a large area that was supposed to remain as ag or resource. Those were later changed to allow for the development of those lands. Subsequently, in around 2007, Clark County had one of the largest expansions of its urban growth boundaries in the state. And most of that land was ag land. And back in that time, the de-designation of ag land was not as stringent as it is now. And if the county allowed for the de-designation of those lands, and an individual property owner or an individual city either put in a development petition or development application for those or annex those lands, then before the growth board was able to deal with them, those lands were also vested. So over the years that we've been taking out larger chunks of these ag lands as we have gone through the process of trying to protect them. And as a result of actions by Clark County, believe it or not, the legislature finally passed a law that says that these lands can't be vested. No development applications on these lands can be vested until after there's an appeal and we can decide whether or not the county is officially or legally de-designated them. So that's what's happened is, the law, especially the vesting laws, property rights laws have been so strong that even if the conversion of the lands violated the Growth Management Act, those conversions were still deemed appropriate because of vesting. I think that's about it, Justin.
Thank you, David. The next question, how does the 179th Street development affect future developments? Maybe Anne, if you want to start there. I noticed Heidi's on the call. I don't know if she has anything to say about this as well.
The question is a little unclear when it says 179th Street development. There's a whole lot of development involved in the 179th Street stretch, east and west of I-5. And I'm going to fumble a little bit here, but essentially that let me just put it this way. I don't know how it will affect future development, but I probably could speak to the fact that the development that is planned for that stretch of 179th Street, east and west of I-5, is not popular and is stretching the limits of how the county should behave with concurrency. In other words, building an infrastructure before development, and was essentially a misguided. I mean, I'm speaking a little bit personally here, but from what I know of it, the whole decision in 2019 was misguided. So there are others that know a lot more about the 179th Street issue than I do, and I would certainly welcome them to step in at this point. Even David, if you want to speak up again. I think Heidi Pozzo's on the call, and she may like to weigh in on this as well.
Heidi, you're muted if you wanted to weigh in, if you wanted to unmute.
Hi. Yeah, I do. If if you can circle back to me in just a couple minutes, I'll be able to chime in more fully.
Sure.
And I'll just, if I could, Justin, to pave the way for Heidi, the reason why the 179th Street area is so controversial is during the original comp plan, the cities were trying to expand their urban growth boundaries as much as possible because they were afraid that they weren't going to be able to expand in the future. So the city of Vancouver's urban growth boundary was approved all the way out to 199th Street. And most of that whole area stayed in a variety of kinds of different holdings, being unable to develop for all the years between 1994 and 2019. And in 2019, the county, in their infinite wisdom, decided that it was an economic growth area. And it's turned out that economic growth is not part of it, and it's all going to be residential. And that's where Heidi will come in and explain it to you. So it was a long fight in 2019 that the county council decided to open up that entire area for development. And what's happened is it's been all residential, no economic.
Okay, thank you, David, for giving me a minute. I think there's some really important items that led up to the 2019 lift of the urban holding. In 2014, the concurrency code was changed. And with that change, $152 million of road projects dropped off of the 6-year and the 20-year plan. In 2019, when the county looked at lifting the urban holding, those projects were needed, and some of them got scheduled. They're not done now. The first piece really is just starting at the roundabout at 29th and 179th. And as David was discussing, in looking at the funding levels that were needed, it didn't look like the funds were actually there in 2019 to lift the urban holding. WashDOT also suggested that it not happen until the interchange was done. So that letter came in 2018. So today what we're looking at is the traffic studies that are being modeled for the developments being approved, look at the future state of the road. So what it will be in its built out form. And there are places where, given what's already been approved, the roads are beyond the capacity of the volume. So 90% full on the road segments. And we haven't really fully seen all the intersections having a problem, but one of the traffic studies I was looking at had a 62 car backup onto I-5 at the exit in the evening. So there are a lot of opportunities to look at things a little bit differently going forward, but those are a few items I'm seeing.
Justin, before losing Heidi here, Heidi, can we just ask that you identify the group that you're working with on And there may be others in the audience that would like to participate with you or stay in touch.
So I've been doing most of the work on 179 Gridlock, the website. So I'm trying to post information there. And there's a few other folks that were looking at appealing a land use decision that approved a development that has a lot of concurrency issues. So, but you can reach us through 179 Gridlock.
Great, thank you.
Great.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Heidi, for stepping in. So the next question, I think we'll start with Jackie on this one, is what is the most impactful places for us to push back? Targeting cluster developments?
Gosh, I'm not sure you picked me on that. I'm not that knowledgeable on that. And I almost want to punt that to Sue if she's willing, but I think she's here.
I'm here.
Hey,
Hi, Sue.
Hi. So I'd be happy to take that one. I think cluster development, that's where there's a large parcel of land. It could be rural, it could be ag, it could be forest. And there is a formula so that the property owner is allowed to subdivide and create, often it's 1 acre lots. And then the remainder parcel remains either rural, forest, or ag. And it was applied, and then it wasn't applied. It came back in 2016. And what I've seen just driving around my area of farm country is that these subdivisions happen just kind of, they seem random, that they just pop up in a rural community, and the remainder parcel may or may not continue as agriculture, and it creates a lot of conflicts as well. And it's really continues that process of parcelizing the rural landscape. So I think I would be in favor of going back pre-2016 to not allow it on, in particular, resource lands, both forest and agriculture. I think de-designation of agricultural land is a very important issue. The council has talked about in the future developing like a transfer of development rights or other kinds of swapping mechanisms so that we don't end up losing any additional agricultural land. And we have learned that there's a whole lot of agricultural land that meets the criteria that could be designated. So I believe those opportunities are out there. And I think, the third one is the infrastructure needs is something that needs to be addressed. It comes very much at the end of the process that started in 21. Thanks for the reminder. We've been at this for so long. There was a work session last Wednesday that would be, if people are interested, taking a look at that, the projections as far as the cost of the infrastructure needed just for transportation for the next 20 years. We are $584 million short. And in 2016, we were $158 million short. So what it appears to be happening is that we're really planning to have this deficit in our transportation. And so unless you scale back growth boundaries or scale back density or raise additional revenue, it's the functionality of our transportation system that by default suffers. Those are 3 ideas for you.
Thank you, Sue. David, do you want to jump in?
So I want to piggyback off of Chair Marshall's wonderful list of things to do. And I want to go back to what Ann said. The plan goes to the Department of Commerce, and the chair can tell me if it went on Friday as it was scheduled. I believe that it did. The Department of Commerce then evaluates it and then weighs in. And then the Department of Commerce sends information to the county that says what they think may or may not be working within the draft plan that is sent to them. So this process, my colleague said 2021, but it actually started in 2020 with the start of the Vacant Buildable Lands Model Committee. And throughout this entire process, Clark County has made multiple comments over and over again, and really have worked to try to drive the population housing employment numbers, the OFM number that we selected, and the vacant buildable lands model, so that the framework that you are looking at now has come from us. And as we go to the final stages of this, as the final EIS is being reviewed, as the council is beginning to hone its preferred alternative, and as the Department of Commerce is weighing in, these are very important times for you to be heard. And if you want to be heard in writing, make sure you go to the site-specific comment part of the county website, and somebody can probably post that in the chat so that we can see it and you can see it. And always make sure that you are saying in your comments that this is for the record of the comprehensive plan update. That's all I got, Justin, to add on to chair.
Great. Thanks, David. So the next question, the panel can let me know who's best to answer this one, is please share your thoughts about how the public can counter those who justify the de-designation of ag lands as acceptable by citing the use of conservation easements as the golden ticket / solution to farmland loss.
I can certainly speak to how we counter the public's response to questioning whether to de-designate agricultural land or not. As it applies to conservation futures, I'm not quite so sure. But as an elected official once looked at me and said, why is it so important that we preserve ag land? My first response was, in the first place, it's the law. And it's the law by virtue of the Growth Management Act that you've heard about today, that mandates that we protect those lands that are assets to Clark County: agriculture, forest, mineral resources. Beyond that, the importance of ag land can't be overstated in terms of the future of the community. It grows food, it provides open space. Open space feeds our aquifer that we depend upon for water. It provides habitat for wildlife, those species that are on the verge of extinction. It's open space for the enjoyment of the public. It's open space for those people that live in apartments in downtown Vancouver and want a lovely ride through the county and stop at a farm stand or stop at a park and wander through the woods. We must preserve what we've got. Now, if somebody else can chime in on the role of conservation futures in this in this answer, that would be great.
So I'm not.
I could
Go ahead.
I could speak
Chair.
to conservation futures.
Thank you.
But you don't have to call me chair in this venue, but thank you.
I like to.
Several years ago, thanks. I think it was 2017. The council at that time and I think they were probably out of compliance with the Growth Management Act, identified agricultural conservation easements as one of the priorities they wanted to set for use of the legacy lands or those conservation dollars. It's allowable under the state law. It hadn't been identified as a priority prior to that.
And yes,
So
you're right, it was
they did that. They set
2017.
aside some.
Mhm.
Oh,
Go
okay.
ahead.
They set aside some funds to do that, but it's taken really up till I think a couple of weeks ago when the first agriculture conservation easement has been secured, and it's the April Joy Farm. So there will be money going forward. It's not a lot of money. You know, all of the priorities related to the Legacy Lands program are important, and so a little bit of it is going to be used for conservation easements on ag land. But in terms of transfer of development rights and other kinds of strategies, there's other tools and other strategies to raise funds for permanent protection of agricultural land.
Thanks, Sue.
Yep.
So the next question is, am I remembering correctly that the 3-2 vote by the council selecting an alternative also triggered an environmental impact study of the selected alternative? Is that accurate? And if so, when will the results be known? And how does this play into the process next steps just outlined here?
I'll start. That's the FEIS that was just published this week, was based on the preferred alternative. And so that is what has been sent as a draft to Commerce, and that is what they are working on. That 60-day comment period started when it was issued. So it's a big document, but we do encourage people to take a look at it and to get their thoughts to the county.
It's
There won't be
498 pages.
There won't be hearings specifically on the FEIS, but there are other hearings between now and then on parts of the comp plan, and then there will be a final hearing as they make the final decision. So that, I don't know if anybody wants to add anything.
There is a 30-day comment period on the environmental impact statement.
And a word of note is 498 pages. So it's a lot to get through in 30 days.
So
I think about half of those pages are public comments.
And graphs, I noticed, or tables. Yes, right.
Yeah.
So if you have a particular interest in transportation or climate change or housing affordability or whatever it happens to be, pick that section, look at it, evaluate it, and that's where you can comment. Or you can go to Friends of Clark County and send us notes, and our board will tell you what analysis our board will be conducting and give you information on that if you want to piggyback on the work we're doing. We're trying not to have everybody reinvent the wheel and 10,000 of us all review such a huge document, and we hope that we can be a clearinghouse for any questions you may have, because the board is working on those as well. Justin, I think, is taking partial lead in looking and evaluating them as a whole. Thank you.
Thanks. So sticking with the topic of transportation, one of the questions we received was, I don't think people are ready to give up their cars, even to allow building of sorely needed housing. How do you see transportation issues being resolved in this environment?
Good question.
So I mean, if somebody else wants to chime in, I'll let them. If not,
Yeah.
I'll give you. the county has over the years not coordinated public
Right.
transportation with residential development. So we have far-flung residential development with sometimes gaps of miles in between where it's a public transportation desert. And what is even though people are not willing to give up their cars, at some point there's going to be no place to park. They're going to be on a road for way longer than they want to. And the pain of that, as the chair said, with the deficit in infrastructure costs, people are going to have to start finding alternatives. And and they're doing that right now along the 179th Street corridor. So you might want to encourage your friends to encourage the county to come up with ways that they can expand the movement of people, or that they have amenities within their neighborhoods, right?
Yes.
A place where you can
Yes.
walk to your
Yes.
grocery store, your coffee shop, your restaurant, your clothing store, your shoe store. And I see Don Stanky here with his hand up, so I'm going to shut up and let him talk.
Thank you. The law requires that Clark County and every city in Clark County reduce their vehicle miles traveled. And the only way to do that is to have density. And so the question that was asked maybe was phrased in a way that I didn't understand. And so the way to provide housing is to have density, and that also helps reduce the vehicle miles traveled. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
And
Thank
for
you.
those of you who don't know, Don's been involved with climate change in our county for what, 25 years or more, Don?
Well, George H.W. Bush in 1990 said, "If you vote for me, I'll fight against climate change." And ever since then, I've been involved, but mainly as a teacher for 20 years, and then publicly since I retired in 29. Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Jim?
Thank you, Don. I want to add the significance of part of what David said were the 15-minute neighborhoods. And they have different names, but that concept has been increasingly heard and reiterated by voices around the county, at least from what I hear. And it's such a simple concept of a small almost a sort of concentric circles where the core of the circle are those, as David said, basic amenities, but I just sort of look at them as the core services, even if it's nothing more than a grocery store. But and then outside that core services, that's where people live. They can walk to the core services within 15 minutes. On the third concentric circle is our resource lands where we can grow food. We can move it easily from ag land and farmland into those concentric circles within that 15-minute neighborhood. It's what you see in Europe, for example. It's a concept that's been around forever. It's basic to humanity, really. And we have forgotten it in Southwest Washington. I would love to see it revitalized.
Agreed. Over to Jim.
So Don Stanky, you stole my thunder. You said what I was planning to say. I just wanted to reiterate that this version of this current growth management plan does have a climate element. And the climate element demands reductions in greenhouse gases and also reductions in vehicular miles. And each alternative of the three alternatives will have different amounts of vehicular miles that would be associated with that alternative.
Right.
Don, did you have some to add?
Yes, 10 days ago, a senior planner for the city of Vancouver called me and asked if I had an opinion on his opinion. He said that in the urban growth area, there needs to be maybe 20, I don't know, 10 or 20 core areas for, like Ann was mentioning, so that, but the county was saying, oh, we're good. We got the core areas on Highway 99. We don't need to have any in Orchards or any in Salmon Creek or Philida. And so he wanted to know if I agreed with him that we need to have those core areas in multiple places within the urban growth areas. And I said, I think we do. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Great.
Good.
Point.
Heidi, I see your hand raised. Did you have something to add?
Yeah, yes, I do. Thank you. So I think, Don and Jim and others have hit the nail on the head. The challenge with the comp plan right now is that all of the commercial areas, so I'm going to focus on 179th area because that's what I know. All of the commercial areas and mixed use are currently and prospectively being converted to 100% residential, can be. And so if you want the 15-minute city with both stores and jobs, it can't all be 100% residential. And that's kind of what we're looking at, because the land is available for the level of density that needs to accommodate the income bands along 179th and down 11th. From a transit perspective, when I was looking at the traffic study for the Salmon Creek Park and Ride, there's about 25% of the parking capacity being taken out to put the BRT line through there. So there's a reduction in parking at the transit hub at the same time we're increasing density. And also, what I could find is there's no view of increasing transit north of WSU and the Salmon Creek Transit Center. And also, a lot of the roads are still rural. So if you're talking about multimodal or transit or what have you, that just doesn't exist in the areas where a lot of density is going. So that's what I have to say on that.
Great. Thank you, Heidi. So for the next question, I think we'll start with Jim. So the question is, how does more farmland and open space benefit me? Why should folks living in urban centers like Vancouver care about farmland de-designation?
Well, I can think of at least two reasons. One is a practical physical reason, and the other one is more philosophical. Underneath all the dirt and shrubbery and bushes in Clark County, we have the Troutdale Aquifer, where we get our drinking water and our water from. And that aquifer needs to be recharged. And the way it gets recharged is water percolating through open space, forest lands, and agriculture lands. So they're critical for our continued existence as we get into warmer and warmer summers and water becomes more of a priority. Another reason is it's psychological. When I'm stressed up from driving around in traffic, if I can take a stroll through the rural lands, take a drive through North County, it helps clear my mind. I like seeing the open space. I like seeing the trees. It's kind of like that Japanese forest walking. Maybe you might call it forest driving, but for me, it's therapeutic. So those are just two reasons off the top of my head. I'm sure participants have many others.
Can I add one?
Please.
Jim mentioned as the summers grow hotter and drier, climate events are becoming more sudden and having a greater impact, and in particular on our food supply. It's imperative that we preserve the prime soils that we've got here on the ag land that we've got in Clark County and utilize it for growing food for our communities. Thank you, Justin.
Thanks. The next question up for grabs with the panelists is, as I drive through Clark County, I see would the preferred alternative make housing more affordable is the question.
I'll start.
We're gonna fight on that one.
The Growth Management Act requires that you plan for housing by income band, and that income bands are decided based on what our population projections are, and what I think the Department of Commerce gives us these numbers. They said this many people at 30% AMI and below, and this many, and so they have these forecasts, and we have to plan for that. Now, we can't make people build for that, but they do have to plan for it, and a lot of affordable housing may end up subsidized. You have to think about that. So they can't plan in any alternative for all McMansions. However, if you look at what they have done in the preferred alternative, those ag lands are not going to turn into affordable housing. I mean, they're not. I mean, there might be a little bit in there, but most affordable housing is going to be within the current UGAs. Those houses, which aren't needed based on the numbers, are going to be for people with money moving up here from Portland because it's so nice up here. And did you want to add something?
No, I think you got it, Jackie. David might have something to add.
So, one of the things that we talk about is whether or not you need more land for affordable housing. And the answer is that you don't. What you need to do is build the homes on the land that's available at a price point that people can afford. Putting multifamily units way far away from public transportation is usually not sustainable for someone who needs affordable housing because they can't afford the commuter costs, the transportation costs to get from their multifamily house to wherever they're going to work. The key for planning has always been, circling back to what Ann says, the 15-minute area, is having places that are affordable and livable for people that they can live within a budget in an area that they can survive and live. So if you build $1 million home on a 6,000 square foot lot in Ridgefield or La Center, you have a density of 6,000, a tight density, but you don't have an affordable home. But if you set up a system in a place where you have these income bands of housing, where people have a variety of different options, then you do have affordable housing without having to expand into the agricultural lands. Developers, home builders, for the most part, in my experience, love to go into agricultural lands because they are easy to develop. They don't cost much. So they can make a lot of money by going into those lands, subdividing them into single family residential and maybe some multifamily or mixed use, but they don't have to provide any transportation. They're still dependent on cars, and that adversely impacts people who need the affordable housing.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
One question we received is, can someone explain more what we mean when we say prime soils?
Oh, Justin, I bet you can do that.
Yeah. When we say prime soils, there's a sort of rating system around the type of soil and the viability, its ability to in terms of like nutrients and the tilth of the soil, as well as its ability to grow food. We have some of the best soil in the world in Clark County, actually. And as part of the ag study that was done, they did some research into what parts of the county had different types of soils, and they had a rating system for it. Jim, I see your hand raised. Do you want to jump in?
I was just going to say that the U.S. Geological Survey has an atlas of Clark County. And they've mapped the county out and they've identified all the different soil types within the county. And they know which are prime agricultural soils and which aren't. So it might be a technical definition, but it was done by the U.S. Geological Survey, as far as I know.
Yeah, and from a farming perspective, the sort of work and investment necessary to grow food profitably depends on the quality of the soil that you have. So this is really important that we especially protect the two highest levels of prime soil and that designation. The ag study itself found that we actually aren't protecting enough of that prime soil in our county. So the properties that are zoned ag that have that prime soil are just critical for the success of farming in Clark County, in my opinion.
Good.
Go ahead, Ann.
No, I just said,
I would, if I could just add, these soils were laid down in geologic time. So, and we're not creating more of them. So that's why it's so critically important to protect what we've got.
Well said. Moving on to another question. How does
one thing is we haven't been doing a very good job of that since the passage of the Growth Management Act in this county, and as those lands, and the county has gobbled up so many of those lands that Sue's point is even more urgent because of what we have been sacrificing in just the 4 decades, plus or minus, since the passage of the GMA.
Okay, the next question is, how does Friends of Clark County know that the public supported open space and DEIS alternative 1?
public comment.
Jim?
The county has conducted a series of surveys throughout the history of growth management through the different comp plans. And it's always come out that there's a tremendous amount of support for conservation. And at the last joint hearings between the Planning Commission and the county councilors, the testimony was overwhelming for alternative 1 in terms of the people who spoke and the positions they took. Alternative 1 was by far in the majority position.
Great. Move us right along to the next question. I heard that Friends of Clark County was anti-development. Are you anti-development?
I'm going to answer that. No, we are not anti-development. However, I shouldn't even say however. We are supportive of balanced growth. We understand and we accept and we acknowledge that growth is inevitable, and that people aspire to live in Clark County. It's a lovely place to live. It's a lovely place to have a family, to raise that family, right now, there are still places where you can take your family, as we've mentioned many times in this panel discussion, that wandering through the open spaces that we have remaining is a joy on a Sunday afternoon. We don't want to lose that. Development has not been balanced from our view. There may be a vision of a balanced growth in which there are designated places for density and for people to live, and there are designated places for the preservation of open spaces. But over the last 20 years in particular, we feel as though development has run a little bit rampant, to say the least.
We'll go over to Jim and then on to David.
So I am not anti-development, but I am for smart development. We need to put the appropriate activities in the appropriate places where they can be successful and not be a detriment to our ecosystem. I agree very much with what Ann just said.
David?
So what I want to emphasize is that our rural and urban communities have a symbiotic relationship. There are a lot of people who want to live in an urban community. They want to have those amenities there. They want to have the walk to the coffee shop, the bus right beside them. They don't want a yard. They just want this, urban environment, and that is where they're comfortable. At the same time, there's people who want to live in a more rural area, and they want to grow crops. They want to have their hands dirty in the soil. They want to have vineyards. They want to, be a part of contributing to the community at large in the way they can by taking care of the land and nurturing it and feeling it and loving it. And we have so many people in this county who love their land in the rural area that by putting more people and having more densities in an urban area allows for people to have those choices to go there. At the same time, in our 90-10 rural split that we have in our comp plan, it gives people who want to live on this land and make it something that is really special for people and preserve the water and, have the recharge areas. It gives them that same opportunity. So the people in the rural area, when they want to, can come into the urban area and they have all these amenities that they're not used to getting in the rural area. The reverse is also true. People in the urban area can do what Jim says. They can go on their frolic and detour out along the East Fork or up into Chalachi or up, wherever our open spaces are found. This is not just one side feeding off another. They work together, and that's the important part of what Friends of Clark County does, is we work with farmers and foresters and people who preserve space and open lands. And we also work with urban people and have their spaces so that they can work well, whether it's tiny houses or, having places where there's kids soccer. That's the kind of thing that Friends of Clark County does. And I just don't want to underemphasize this symbiotic relationship where both communities work together to help each other and feed off each other. And if you destroy one or the other, or put more emphasis on one or the other, then that hurts that symbiotic relationship. That's my point.
That's great. The next question is, are public comments really listened to? Does the council actually read them?
Oh, that's a good one for Chair Marshall.
Yes, there we go. Yes, actually, I printed out the environmental impact statement, and this is the stack of public comments that I printed out, and it's very fine print. So comments get. It's important to read the comments, both the pro and the con, because it's important to understand what people are saying that you may not agree with, so that you'd be able to, when it comes to public deliberation on the policy, be able to have a counter opinion. So yes, I can only speak for myself, though.
Thank you, Sue. And when people write in, should they be writing to one or two counselors, or all of them?
Should write to all of them, unless there's, you can write to your own personal counselor, but it takes 3 to pass anything. So I would advise people to write to everyone.
Great. We have one final question that I'm seeing on my list here. Is there any planning being done regarding the Cascadia subduction zone event? Wondering if that, I'm guessing that's not part of the GMA, but.
Right. It had come up as a topic of interest, mainly because any mining effort does, okay, and there was an application or a pre-application submitted, or an application, I'm not sure which, by a local company to mine an extensive number of acres in Skamania County, but very close to the Washougal border. And the concern to Clark County could be the impact of trucks that carry that aggregate over Clark County roads, presumably to go to the Port of Vancouver. That's an assumption. However, the Friends of, if I can get this right, the Friends of the Gorge and the Gorge Commission, the Columbia River Gorge Commission, are all heavily involved in this. So we'll piggyback onto whatever their final opinions are at this point in time. But we don't know that much about it yet.
I would just add a little bit more broadly within
Yes.
the environmental impact statement. There are various maps that show landslide prone areas, liquefaction areas that not specifically tied to the big one that we know we're overdue for getting, but all of those areas that you can see on the maps will be vulnerable.
Good.
Great. I think that concludes our Q&A section. We're going to move into a brief update on other Friends of Clark County priorities. If we can go to the next slide, that'll be Ann and Jim.
So regarding farmlands and forests, Friends of Clark County has a forestry issue team which monitors Washington DNR timber auctions. We've asked the County Council to write 4 letters to DNR, collaborating with recent timber sales in the county, and the County Council has done so. We are engaging with other statewide forestry groups to shift DNR's focus from extraction to stewardship of the state's forest resources. Collaborating with County Council and Public Works to create a Clark County Forest Advisory Board to swap legacy forest lands with other timberlands for preservation purposes. We've also persuaded the county council to create an agricultural advisory board consisting of primarily farmers. They hold monthly meetings, provide open public comments, and advise the county council. Major issues they will undertake are transfer of development rights and the de-designation of agricultural lands. Parks, trails, and open spaces, there exists a large deficit in the parks funding and levels of services. We're at about 30% of the national average for communities our size. The County Parks Department is developing a municipal parks plan to provide funding. And Friends of Clark County will work with parks to ensure the best municipal park plan is adopted and implemented. Ann?
No, I can't emphasize enough the importance, once again, as I have a couple of times so far in our panel discussion, the importance of preserving and cultivating a healthy local food system. That is as much a priority as is housing, as a basic need for our residents. So not only preserving the land on which our local food grows, but also in nurturing and supporting and growing an infrastructure of an economy that will support those who farm, and those who need to store food for the purpose of selling, marketing opportunities. The whole farm economy is essential to preserve. Rivers, lakes, and aquifers, as there are issues which impact the county, Friends of Clark County considers that a priority. The same with wildlife habitats and, of course, housing and transportation, as it impacts, once again, not just one city, but the entire community. And I would like to add that we are very involved in the climate action groups that have been formed by the county since House Bill 1181 at the state level, which was the Climate Change Act. I think probably this summer we're seeing little bits and pieces of what our future summers are going to look like. And that's not a whole lot of water. So everything that we do and every decision we make has to be under the umbrella of mitigating or building resilience in the event of a severe climate event. It's just essential to our continued survival and, of course, of our future generations. So that's it for our priorities. We have a lot on our plate, folks.
Thanks, Ann. If we want to go to the next slide. So to that end, please help support Friends of Clark County. There's a couple of ways you can do that. One is donating to support our mission. You can also get involved. We're an all-volunteer organization. You can volunteer. You can also join our board to get even more involved. You can stay informed by signing up for our newsletter, following us on social media, and look out for our weekly radars in the news section on our website. And I think most importantly, engage with your elected officials, with county and city staff on issues that matter to you. David.
If I could just add to that, Justin, Friends of Clark County does an annual fundraiser dinner celebration every year. This year it is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe September 13th.
That's correct.
We welcome all of you to come, meet us, talk to us, support what we are doing. We want to be inclusive and bring you on board. We actually have people from the building community that comes every year to our event. We turn away no one. We want you to be part of our vision, and we listen to you, and we want you to be part of it. Come and join us.
And we have a great silent and live auction.
That I might even be part of.
Right.
Great food and great company as well.
And that'll be at the Green Meadows Country Club.
Cedars.
Cedars.
Cedars, sorry.
That's okay. That was okay.
Okay, if you want to go to the next slide. You can also connect directly with our panelists. Information's up on the screen here. It'll also be part of the recording to reference in the future.
Yeah, and I don't look like that anymore.
All right, you can go to the next slide. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. It was a great discussion. Look forward to connecting with you soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Have
you,
a great
everyone.
evening.
Thank you.